Joey from JLD Travels coming back with a new video today. I'm actually jumping back into checking out a video from the Filipina Pea because I haven't done one of her videos for a while, and it's her video, the 10 biggest lies about the Philippines. Can you handle the truth? We're gonna jump right in and see what she's got to say.
Hi folks, the Filipina Pea here. And in my 3 years on YouTube, I've heard just about every misconception about Filipinos you can think of. Some of it was probably said out of spite, and some of it out of sheer ignorance, but lies they are, nonetheless. Apparently, some people think we eat dogs, others consider us lazy, and a lot of people claim that Filipinos are gold diggers. Well, today I'm here to set the record straight and give you the real story about all those things and more. That is, if you'll take the word of a lazy gold-digging dog eater. Filipinos eat dogs. The Chinese have a reputation for being indiscriminate eaters, so maybe that's where the confusion comes from. But I assure you, Filipinos don't typically put dog on the menu. Now, it's true that just a few days ago, someone was arrested in the northern part of the country for selling dog meat, but that's not something the average Filipino could stomach. There are no restaurants here called McDoberman's or Bigo King, and unless someone's literally starving, the mere thought of eating a chihuahua is enough to give you the shih tzus. Filipinos might eat a lot of funky stuff like pig's face and chicken necks, but most of us could never get over eating Rover. Filipinos don't want to go anywhere or do anything. Oh yeah, we do. We love to travel. In fact, most of us would rather see a new place than buy a new dress or eat at a fancy restaurant, unless they serve unlimited rice. That's probably because we rarely get a chance to travel, so it's a big deal for us when we do. Older Western movies before the world went woke and you couldn't say anything about anyone had the stereotypical Asian with a camera, snapping pictures of everything they saw. Well, there's a reason for that. For a Filipino, going to new places is a status symbol, and we can't help taking endless pictures of the most trivial things, including multiple shots of ourselves standing in the bathroom of a rest area in the middle of a desert. I don't know who's ever gonna see the pictures we take, but our phones are full of them. As far as not wanting to do anything, there's two reasons for that claim. The first reason is because we generally don't have the money for unnecessary amusements. But the second reason is because we're afraid of making fools of ourselves in public. Ask a Filipina to strap on ice skates, and she might be terrified of falling and having everyone laugh at her and point, which is a nightmare scenario for any self-respecting Filipino because of the way our culture works. But it's not a lack of desire to try new things. It's just a fear of embarrassment. Filipinos only want green cards. Nope, just a flat-out lie. Only about 50% of us are agreeable to moving to the West, if our partner wants to. But it's not necessarily our first pick. Many, if not most of us, would prefer to stay right here. Are there green card chasers? You bet! Are there women who only want to get to the West so they can be with their boyfriends who are already there? I'm sure there are. But you can't say Filipinas only want a green card because that's objectively not true. Give us a stable, loving man and we're perfectly happy to stay right here in the Philippines, close to our family, friends, and the life that we know and love. If you start dating a Filipina who only seems interested in a life in the West, then some red flags ought to start waving, and I hope you're savvy enough not to fall for it. Lord knows I've tried my best to show you how to avoid that type of woman. And look at it like this. Don't you think that all successful Filipino vloggers on YouTube could already have their green cards by now? But they don't, because we don't want them. Oh, just a sec. Hello? Yes, I've got my green card! Oops. The Philippines is dangerous. They say there are lies, damn lies, and then there are statistics. Well, it can be pretty easy to use numbers to say whatever you want them to. The government just released the crime statistics for the first 2 months of this year. Compared to last year's figures, they show a 19% drop in the overall crime rate in the first 2 months of 2023. Does that mean that the Philippines is on its way to becoming a crime-free paradise? Absolutely not. But when you compare the figures to the US, you'll find that the incidence of most major crimes is actually comparable to, or less than, American levels. I left a link to the latest survey in the description box. Tourists and foreigners are actually quite safe here, and mostly only need to be concerned about crimes like petty theft. Talk to almost any visitor here, and they'll tell you that they've never felt threatened or in danger one single time during their stay. Filipinos are lazy. Well, that might be partly true for some of us.
Just gonna quickly stop it there. Whoever came up that the Filipinos are lazy seriously does need their head read, because there's not one Filipino that I've ever come across, that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting, that's lazy. That's one thing I can say wholeheartedly, with my hand across my heart and hope to die and all that sort of shit, is that the Filipino people are not lazy. They work harder for so much less money than what we're very fortunate enough to earn in the West. That's why so many of them become OFWs and will work so hard over here. Will probably try and not have a day off if they can help it, just to keep working, to earn enough to save to go back to the Philippines and build a life there themselves. And that is just so wrong. So wrong. Let's jump back in, guys.
It certainly doesn't apply to the vast majority of Filipinos who wake up at the crack of dawn and sometimes travel quite a ways just to get to work on time. We put in long hours too, and many of us are expected to work overtime without any prior notice, and we're happy to have it. But when people say we're lazy, what they're probably referring to is that one person in every family who never seems to find their way and doesn't seem enthusiastic about getting back on track. If you've dated a Filipina with a big family, you might have run across an uncle or a sibling that prefers to have his hand out instead of looking for a more profitable use of his time. A simple life can be had for next to nothing in the Philippines, so nothing is what some people attempt to achieve. But the reason behind it is often a sense of hopelessness that drives a man to grab a beer instead of heading into the fields. If you knew you were gonna trade 10 hours of back-breaking work in the sun, literally for just a few bucks, you might not be motivated to show up for work with a smile on your face and a bounce in your step. Some people know they can work as hard as they want, but there's no upward mobility in their job. No promotion from banana picker to executive banana picker. You'd like to think that the harder you work, the faster you work, means that you'll be rewarded somehow. But that's not always the case here. A lot of people work just so they can eat, and there's not much of a financial incentive beyond survival. But the average Filipino works his butt off to provide for his mate and his family. Anyone that suggests that Filipinos are lazy just doesn't have a clue. Filipinos are submissive. Okay, we've all heard this one before, and I just made a whole video on the topic, but I'll mention a few additional reasons why that misconception is just a plain old lie. Everyone's familiar with the stereotype of the Asian woman with her hand over her mouth when she laughs. The tiny little woman who thinks that having a family is her greatest achievement. And a woman who quietly absorbs an insult instead of dishing one out in return. Well, I hate to tell you, but those things have nothing to do with being submissive. You're looking at things through a Western lens, and the behavior you're seeing is a product of our culture, not a sign of someone that's malleable or compliant. Filipinos are not submissive, and we'll tell you exactly what we think when the time is right. You know how people sometimes say that Latino women are hot-blooded? Well, that's just as true for Filipinas. We just have a different way of showing it, and we're less likely to make a scene in public. Even though you might assume that it's only the Filipino men who wear the pants in the family, in many ways, you could say it's just as much of a matriarchy in the Philippines. Women not only take care of the household, but in most cases, they also handle the family finances, and their husbands hand over their wages to their wives. Now, compared to a loud, opinionated, or demanding woman from a different country, a Filipina might seem submissive at first glance. But don't confuse being reserved with being submissive. Anyone who comes to the Philippines expecting all the women to be quiet little mice has another thing coming. Filipinos are just gold diggers. Well, depending on how you define it, you could argue that all women are gold diggers. I'm not aware of women from any part of the world that don't care about having enough money. Men either. But the important thing is, how much is enough and what are you willing to do to get it? Can you call it digging gold when a woman wants to make sure she has a secure future by marrying a guy that can provide it? Maybe I'm way off, but to me, the term gold digger brings up an image of a Cruella de Vil type with a fur coat and high heels who's willing to use them to crush whoever gets in her way. A woman who's consumed with accumulating more money than she could ever spend. A woman who wouldn't think twice about bailing out on her husband to land on a soft pile of cash. But that's not your average Filipina. Most of us don't dream of riches. We dream of a life where we don't end up with a leaky roof. And that doesn't sound like the definition of a gold digger to me. Sure, there are women who want to stack up as much gold as possible so they can sit on their hoard like Smog the Dragon. But Filipinos weren't brought up in a culture of consumerism and excessive wealth, so that kind of behavior isn't as common here. What some people might be reacting to are those Filipinas who seem preoccupied with money, but it might only be because they never had any, and they're afraid it won't last. The average Filipina, though, is definitely not what I'd call a gold digger, not by a long shot. I wouldn't necessarily call this one a lie, but it can be very deceptive. Cheap is a subjective term, and it really depends on where you're coming from and how you want to live. Lots of things are cheap here, but many more are not. The biggest differences you'll probably see are the rental prices and the cost of healthcare and insurance. Renting a house or apartment can save you a bunch of money in the Philippines. But if you try to buy anything like a nice condo, you might find that the prices are even a little bit higher than back home. Going to the doctor is almost definitely gonna be cheaper than what you're used to, unless you had free healthcare. But that's pretty much where the huge differences come to an end. Gas prices here ain't cheap, and neither are food prices if you buy your stuff at the grocery store. Electricity is actually more expensive than a lot of Western countries, and so are things like used cars and appliances. So why do people say it's so cheap to live here? Well, the reason is because most foreigners don't try to copy the lifestyle they had back home. If you do, you're gonna find out it's actually more expensive to do it in the Philippines. What many people do is take advantage of the things that are a good deal here and avoid the things that are overpriced. If you think you can live without constant air conditioning and expensive beef, and if you can get around without buying a car, you'll end up keeping a lot of money in your own pocket. So when someone tells you how cheap it is to live here, just understand that there's a big if connected to that statement. Filipinos are good drivers. It's just the laws that aren't enforced. Okay, well, part of that is true. Traffic laws are generally not enforced, except in the heart of the city or where there's a busy intersection, sometimes. Anyone who's been here knows what a clusterfuck the traffic situation is. People changing lanes with no blinkers. People making new lanes whenever they want to. Cars parking right in the middle.
Yeah, just going to quickly jump into this bit about are Filipinos good drivers or not. One thing I will have to say, in the 3 times that I have been to the Philippines, I've never once seen a hit and run or any kind of car accident or a vehicle hitting another vehicle or a vehicle hitting a pedestrian. The way that I will best describe the traffic flow of all the vehicles on the road is controlled chaos. And they have this little thing of when buses and things are going, larger vehicles are going past. They had like this beeping sort of car sign language just to let obviously people know that they're moving or they're stopping or what's going on. And I think I've only seen a car that had been in an accident once, which I think was on my second trip, and I don't know if it hit something or something like that, and it was just on the side of the road, and it was just left there and saw it for like a week solidly, and it was just still there. But even in downtown Tacloban City, I never once saw a car accident or anything close to a car accident. Even with all the scooters going around and people on motorbikes and things like that, all this weaving in and out and everything, there was never once an accident. So I would have to say that the Filipinos are good drivers in the most part. I don't know how strict their traffic laws are because I don't drive myself, but I would have to agree that they are good drivers and it's like controlled chaos.
Of the road or driving with no lights at night. And you'll rarely ever see anyone get a traffic ticket. I've been driving for over a decade and I've never once seen a person get a speeding ticket. So it's easy to conclude that it's not the drivers that are bad, it's the lack of enforcement. If there were police everywhere, drivers would suddenly become role models for vehicle safety. But nope, sorry, it's the drivers too, even when no one's watching. Have you ever seen a Filipino try to put their car into a parking space? It can take up to a dozen tries, going back and forth a few feet and turning the wheel the wrong way and ending up with the back half of the car sticking out in the road. We don't seem to be able to calculate speed and distance very well either, because we think nothing of pulling out right in front of you with mere inches to spare. Almost as if we're not even looking, which most of the time we're not. In this case, it's kind of like the camera thing. If I wasn't Asian, I'd get canceled for saying this. But we Filipinos are really bad drivers. So buckle up if you can find a seatbelt.
I disagree.
Filipinos don't really love the foreigners they marry. Okay, I get so tired of hearing this one. And it's mostly repeated by people who have either never been here and can't understand the attraction, or by people who have had a bad experience. Of course, some women marry for reasons other than love, just like anywhere else in the world. And in really poor countries, there's the added incentive of trying to pull yourself out of poverty. But that's still the exception, rather than the rule. I personally know lots of Filipinas who married Western guys, and every single one of them is very much in love with the guy they chose. Anyone who's lived here knows the situation. But instead of just sitting here and telling you what I think, there's a pretty reliable way to check it out yourself. Look down below, in the comment section, at the number of guys that married a Filipina who have been happy for years. You'll hear a lot of them say that marrying their Filipino wife was the best decision they've ever made. Now compare that to the number of comments that say, man, that Filipina I married turned out to be a gold-digging scammer. You'll see it's not even close. The good experiences far outweigh the bad. And before you say, well, people are just more reluctant to talk about the bad things, then may I remind you where you are? In the comments section of an online YouTube video? You know, that place where people love to make snarky, nasty, and untrue claims? Even despite that, I have no doubt about the results. So, come on guys, if you think you made a good choice by marrying a Filipina, then post it. And if your Filipina turned out to be a blood-sucking vampire, then post that too. The more people that respond, the bigger the sample size. And the bigger the sample size, the closer we get to the objective truth, which is that most Filipinas absolutely do love their foreign husbands. So those are the 10 lies and misconceptions about Filipinos and the Philippines. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go have a St. Bernard sandwich and check on the status of my green card. But I'll be back on Tuesday with something fresh. Unless I'm feeling lazy. Till next time, folks.
She's so funny.
If you think about it, I'm kind of like a teacher, providing knowledge about the Philippines twice a week. My course covers many different subjects, including the psychology of dealing with the local inhabitants, the mathematics of constructing a workable budget, and even biology with the sometimes bizarre mating habits of the Filipina. All I ask for this higher education is that you subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell so you're never late for class, and check out my Patreon page for extra content and exclusive features. And while you're waiting for your next lesson, it might be a good idea to study the other course material. Because after grading your last exam, I'm afraid I'm gonna need you to stay after class for a little cramming session. Are you ready?
Yeah, well, we're just gonna stop it there. Another great video by Filipina P. Even though the subject was, I wouldn't say too serious, but she was obviously trying to defend Filipinos, Filipino people, and the Philippines in general. And but how she does it, she just takes such a what's the right way? A less serious way, and tries to put in some jokes and tries to make it a bit less serious. But the subject still itself, I would pretty much all the way through, I would have to agree with every single bit of it, because every Filipino that I've come across, whether it's in for a very brief short period when I've been in a shop or been at the airport and someone's trying to get me to get a taxi and I don't want it, even whatever the scenario has been, everyone that I've met, they've been so hardworking, they've been so friendly, they've been so kind. Hospitality in the Philippines can't be touched by anyone else. These people will work so hard to make you happy, to have your experience be the best it physically can and the best that they can physically give you. And just my personal experience with my fiance's family, they've been absolutely fantastic. They welcomed me in to the family and treat me no differently to how they would treat anyone else in their family. We're in fairly regular contact through Facebook and things like that. And I know my fiance loves me, I love her, and we're taking steps slowly to give us a very, very good chance to, chance is the wrong word, basically put us in a place where we're going to probably spend a few years in England, work together really, really hard, save loads of money, and have the money so we can go back to the Philippines, build our life there, and obviously get married over there as well, build a family, build a small business, and just live a simple life. And I've realised through all the time I spent with her and her family, and in the province specifically, how much I don't actually need to be happy. And as long as I can watch some things on like a laptop or something, or on like a smart TV, or even just if I just had my phone and don't really necessarily need to have a TV or games console or anything like that. And yeah, it's the way of life there is so much more in tune with how I am as a person, and that's our goal. It's a goal we will reach together, and yeah, and I just can't wait for that to become a reality. And just very excited going to be able to have her with me every day because I do miss her so much on the times that we are apart. And yeah, so thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you've seen, would like to see more, please don't hesitate to check out all our other videos. I have a most recent video just to the left and the most recent playlist just to the right. Please drop us a like on the video, share the video around. Please don't hesitate to drop a comment down below. We'd love to hear from all of you and keep pushing towards 400. Don't think it's probably going to happen by the end of June, but hopefully we can still push that forward to the 400. And then yeah, so smash the subscribe button, tap the bell icon so we don't miss a video, and we'll catch you in the next one, guys. Cheerio.